Hey everybody, thanks for joining us for another episode of I Only Ask Because. Your host Tony and my co-host Dr. E, and I'm just going to let Dr. E get us started. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Tony. My question today is, as a culture, are we overly selective in terms of groups we consider labor pools? Groups we're willing to hire from. I only ask because recently I saw a clip, a short, where a gentleman was referring to a Stanford University study that talked about how in the United States, if you belong to the African American culture, that you are about as likely as someone from another group with a felony to be hired for a job. And so, of course, being a Stanford study, it breaks it down on a lot of different levels. But where my mind immediately went to was thinking about apprenticeships and how, back in the 1970s, for example, apprenticeship programs were really selective. Like you had to look a certain way, they weren't considering women. You well, where I'm from, you almost had to be from a certain neighborhood, and so the apprenticeships were moderately trained and really high salaries, and so everybody wanted them, and people were kind of shut out of that. So fast forward to the I guess the 2020s, where you have technical schools and 2 year institutions and really some 4 year institutions trying to develop apprenticeship programs because in certain fields we don't have enough employees to fill when the current employees are retiring, for example, or
Yeah.
should they leave or be promoted, whatever. So now the apprenticeship programs are looking for darn near everybody. We want more women, and we want more minoritized groups, and we want. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there are a few groups that I look at when I think about is business and industry kind of missing the mark by not being open to these groups, or to take it a step further, not actively recruiting from these groups. And so, what comes to mind for me would be just as involved, individuals who are coming out looking for work.
Mm-hmm.
I think of people who are coming out of recovery, for example, with alcohol or drug misuse. How are we funneling those groups, right? So I'm not really on culture today as much as I am just feeling like we have a tendency to overlook certain groups and then have to circle back around and try and get them up to speed and make them appropriate for needs that we kind of really should have seen coming. Adult learners, for example, people getting their high school equivalency. How are we targeting and training those groups? I feel like those groups have been ignored for a while too. So, anyway, that's why I'm asking.
Okay. Well, let me start by saying this. I think there is a reason that we have so much. I think there's a reason that we're falling behind with China, with India, when it comes to just the labor that we get, specifically in tech. And I think it's really just, as you were talking, I was just thinking, like, wow, this is crazy. So people like to say back in the 60s and 70s, like the Democrats have always been, they were the racist party back then. So we all know that the parties basically flipped because what their goals were and what their intentions were kind of didn't go hand in hand once all of a sudden the working class that people were looking out for were the minorities that had been basically discriminated against and marginalized for so long. You still have that, I think, today, but it's on a much smaller scale, and a lot of it is indirect. So it's not like, we're not having separate water fountains and all of that, but we were talking about this earlier. If you see a certain name on a resume, you're like, maybe don't want that because I think I know what kind of household he came from. I think I know that that's not somebody I want working. And the problem with that is you have so many people, and you can see it just with the way the presidents changed. We had Trump in 16, Biden in 20, and then Trump again coming in 24. You have a lot of people who are so worried about keeping other people out and they're not looking in the mirror thinking like, man, I am super, super not qualified to do most of the stuff that I'm asked to do.